There was an uncle who was willing to sponsor him, but the uncle lives in California, and there was a delay between when Machen could get to California and when he would be released on his 18th birthday. And if there wasn't someone or some place for him to go, he was going to be sent to adult detention. This photo was taken just moments before he got on a bus to California on Friday. When I got that text from Kristen Peck, who dropped him off at the bus station, I thought to myself, this is enough. After political unrest and a physical attack on him, Machen's family decided it was no longer safe for him to stay in India. His mother and younger brothers went to be with family outside of their village. His father went to another place, and Machen boarded a flight in Delhi. 3 days later, he would begin his journey by foot from Ecuador to the United States. In California, he would be detained by ICE just as soon as he crossed the border, and as an unaccompanied minor, flown to New York City, where he would spend 5 months in what was a former orphanage that now houses unaccompanied minors. During his journey to the United States, he was robbed, he was beaten, and he was tied up daily by the smugglers who companioned him on his journey. Once in New York, he did not receive enough food regularly or sufficient clothing. When I met Machen on New Year's Day, he had just turned 18. He seemed frightened and kept his hands in his pockets, and when he sat and you tried to have conversation with him, you would see that his leg would keep shaking. I myself still felt fresh from the immensity of injustice at the border, having just come back in December from the Mexican-U.S. border in California, with the faces of children and young adults and elders pressing their faces up between the slats of the border fence. On New Year's Eve, Julie texted me and said, "Should we get a cake for staff meeting on the 2nd? And I have to say, in the swirl of the storm that was where we were, I said, "Why would we get a cake, Julie?" I thought she was feeling particularly joyous about 2019. She said, "Because the 1st is Machen's birthday." Oh. Shouldn't we celebrate? And so we did. We got a cake and put candles in it, telling him about the practice here of blowing out candles and making a wish, and then realizing when we told him to make his wish, we should say that it should be a short one because the candles burn quickly. By midweek, Machen had come over to my house for dinner. My twin 4-year-olds, Ella and Kirk, were fascinated when he told them that he had a bedroom here at Beacon. And since my wife Anne-Marie had a work call that night, I decided that when I brought Machen back, Ella and Kirk would come with me and they could get a tour of his bedroom and we could make an event of it. And on our way back, I could tell Machen wasn't exactly ready to come back. And it was a little early in the evening, so I said, "Let's go to Starbucks." So we stopped at Starbucks in Milburn, and what the crew we were coming in, Ella and Kirk in their pajamas, running around asking, "Can I have this? Can I have this?" And me trying to negotiate very little words that Machen understood and very little that he could tell me, but we got our orders at some point. We took a quick photo.
That's nice.
This was the first time in his stay with us that I saw Machen's face just light up and open up. It was a delight. The next night, Brian Halpin invited Machen over for dinner. It had been a full day. Ellen Boylan had taken him out to get his bus ticket to head to California. He couldn't fly because his passport had been stolen in the jungles. She had ensured that he had a phone for his travel. And so Brian invited him over for dinner with some neighbors and Beacon members who spoke Hindi, and it was an opportunity for everyone to connect. Brian came back that night and dropped Makan back off at Beacon, and we all had a social justice coordinating team meeting together. And so as Brian and I were walking up the stairs over here to the meeting, he said to me, you know, it was great to be able to have that chance to have dinner together. And I said, Brian, thank you so much. Thank you for arranging it. Thank you for picking Makan up with such short notice. And he says, oh no, it was really a small thing, Robin. Like, don't worry about it. It was nothing. And I thought about this Starbucks experience. How oftentimes I go in and I am not even thinking about the gift of a hot thing to drink, right? Prepared for me. And how Makan lit up to be included in a small moment in that space. And so I said to Brian, you know, Brian, in a way, it's a really small thing. And in another way, for Makan, these are moments transforming the course of his life. So maybe it's not so small. And maybe it's more than enough. The wider culture can easily encourage a spirit of insufficiency and a sense of insurmountability. Panic, sells, and despair and snark are at every corner. But come into this faith, we say, a place that believes in the potentiality of all people in a world with metaphorical dumpster fires. In a faith that teaches we are interwoven and interdependent in the midst of the myth of hyper-individualism. Come inside, we say, into the circle of love, we say, that excludes no one. And there, even in that daring to say these statements, we are a people of audacious hope. A hope that cannot survive by living between the pages of a book, but instead comes alive between clay and starshine in you and me. Such hope is the soul's commitment. As Tolkien reminds us in Two Towers, there is some good in this world, and it's worth fighting for. So in 2019, beloved, let's fight for hope. Far from skittish, hope is the thing you pursue and choose against the odds. Hope is the thing you train yourself to notice, to tend to, and to share like a small olive branch, heralding that in the 360 degrees of nothing but water, we know somewhere there is land. And it's not of the imagination or the conjuring of impossibility. Instead, hope is that small branch that is the evidence of things that can be. And in noticing and praising them, building up the truth and power and meaning in them, we find grounding land once more. We midwives to the new world. This is how it works. Resilience rises up from the authenticity of living on this bridge between clay and starshine. Isn't that enough to celebrate this life that we've made? Won't you celebrate with me? Courageous beacons that you are. Come celebrate with me. The paradox of tragedy and beauty, that we are stardust in our bodies and clay beneath our feet. That our very survival is rooted and aspirational. That this day, it, you, we are more than enough to shine on. Shine on, beloved. Fight for hope.
that I despaired, hope would arise. When explaining the bus ticket to Makhan, it so happens that I speak Hindi and our new finance manager actually speaks Punjabi, so we were trying to go through the itinerary with him. I was despairing that he wouldn't figure it out. I had forgotten that in India you can write Hindi with English letters, right? So you can actually figure it out. But there I was despairing that he wouldn't understand how to get all the way from here to California with so many bus changes. And I was pointing to the second stop, and like 2 hours to this place, and he goes, Philadelphia. I'm like, oh, he's got it. He can do it. I don't have to worry. I can let this go. Every time I thought about his journey on foot through the jungles of Panama and Nicaragua, how he had been intimidated and held at gunpoint, and I had a pit in my stomach. And then suddenly there was Sally Gotthoff with a bright red suitcase filled with Ben's hand-me-downs. And there was Ellen with a new smartphone for him. And there was Kristen with dinner, and Brian and Karen staying the night. So this is amazing. And this is what we do, from prepping meals to buying him what he needed, taking him for walks, staying overnight with him. So we walk together, fellow Beaconites. We walk together, buoying our spirits so that we may continue on this journey in 2019. With this, our morning's offering will be gratefully received. Thank you.
You don't dress up in satin, you don't wear diamond ring, but I'm satisfied with you. You look just like a angel, you have nothing, but I'm satisfied with you. I'd rather have you just the way you are than dream of somebody else. Baby, I could do better if I reached for a star, but I'm satisfied with you. You're not made out of candy, just sweet as you can be. I'm satisfied with you, but I just can't see a reason why you're bothering me. But I'm satisfied with you. I wonder if it's all a mistake. It's hard to believe that it's you. But if I had to, I don't want to wait, 'cause I'm satisfied with you. Well, maybe if I'm dreaming, then I don't want to wait, 'cause I'm satisfied. Oh, so satisfied with you.
It's hard not to say I'm satisfied. We give thanks for the generous offering that lies within these plates. We give thanks for your presence. We give thanks for the band. We give thanks of all of us who carry out our mission in the world to be a radically inclusive community that feeds the human spirit as today does and heals this world. May it be a blessing.
So a few things. Today at 12:15, there is the first of our Starting Point series, which is a session for newcomers, but all of us are newcomers in some sense in 2019. So you are invited to attend that. You'll find out more about what religion is. And next Sunday, we will be thinking about Unitarian Universalism, and the Sunday after that about Beacon. So please do join our community, 12:15, Starting Point in the library. Next Sunday, we're back to 3 services, so 9:30, 11, and 4 p.m. You are invited to come after each service for 45 minutes for a session led by our very own Pat Dobbs about hearing impairment, and that will be someplace. We will figure it out. And finally, there are many new people joining our community today. Could I ask you to rise, please, if you are today becoming a member?
They're all coming to 11.
They're coming to the Thank you, Karen, Chris. Thank you so much. And we're going to ask you to stay standing as everybody else is invited to go and greet somebody and say, hey.
We love doing this.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Still am, I hope. Behind the... Oh, I saw the jazz hands going on. Yeah. What's your name? Oh, do you? Okay. This is Steve Daddy. Sonny. This is Daddy's jazz hands.
All right.
Follow me red, and joy comes back. 'Cause I've been down hard.